Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks, whenever you're watching this video. This is Doug with News and Views by Doug. And this is where I talk about my observations and opinions on world events, politics, and pretty much anything else I feel like talking about. And we're going to start off with something a little bit different. Either God or Mother Nature's pissed at us because recently, in the last couple of weeks, she's been hitting us hard. I think it was within the last 2 weeks, there's been two major earthquakes down in the South Pacific. There was a large earthquake in California a couple of days ago. It was a 5.6. Venezuela got major earthquakes. They got hit yesterday with two of them 39 seconds apart. And the first one was 7.2 and the second one was 7.5. And we've got a lot of people injured. They're expecting the death toll to go, just crazy. Buildings collapsed, debris was falling, and the poor Venezuelans.
First of this developing news from Caracas, we have live pictures coming into us. We can see here rescue crews. They are working through the night. They're trying to find survivors after those two successive earthquakes devastated Venezuela's capital. There were 7.5 and 7.2 magnitude earthquakes, and they happened within the space of a minute. They rocked the city in scenes that residents say was reminiscent of a horror movie. Venezuela has activated an emergency declaration, shutting schools and hospitals. Authorities have just provided an update. They've put the death toll at 37 for the time being. There are fears, though, that number could climb into the tens of thousands.
A frantic search for survivors in Venezuela's capital. Rescuers scrambling through rubble where buildings once stood. As darkness blankets Caracas, families gather in the streets, desperate and searching for answers.
When we went downstairs, the scene was like a horror movie. We had to climb over the rubble and everything.
The building moved from side to side because it was incredible.
Several walls in the area collapsed, and it was really strong. We're expecting some aftershocks.
The first earthquake, initially measured at magnitude 7.2, struck shortly after 6 o'clock on Wednesday evening, local time. Its epicentre, west of the city of Morón, around 168 kilometres from Caracas. Less than a minute later, a second and more powerful magnitude 7.5 tremor hit. Smoke was seen rising above the skyline, buildings swaying across the capital. At Simón Bolívar International Airport, just north of Caracas, travellers ran for cover as the ceiling gave way. Smoke and debris quickly filled the terminal. The airport has since been shut down. Many Venezuelans were at home enjoying a public holiday when the ground suddenly began to shake. Authorities fear mass casualties. A tsunami warning was briefly issued for parts of the Caribbean before being lifted. The earthquakes are among the strongest to strike Venezuela in more than a century. The tremors so powerful, they were felt across several states. A country shaken in seconds, now facing a long stretch of fear, rubble and uncertainty. Lauren Forbes, Sky News.
And the US President Donald Trump has responded to those earthquakes in Venezuela. In a post on Truth Social, he writes, "The two major earthquakes that just hit the great people of Venezuela are both massive in scale and have left a devastating number of deaths. The USA stands ready, willing and able to help." He says, "I've instructed all our agencies of our government to get ready and to move quickly. We will be there for our new and great friends. Early reports are not good." We'll keep an eye on that situation for you and bring you any further developments throughout the program. We can see those live pictures there as the hunt for survivors continues.
like this video, then like, share and subscribe to Mirror Now.
¡Está temblando!
¡Está temblando! ¡Está temblando! ¡Dios mío, no, Dani!
On the evening of June 24th, 2026, Venezuela was struck by one of the most catastrophic seismic events in its modern history. Two powerful earthquakes, separated by just 40 seconds, unleashed destruction across the country's northern region, collapsing buildings in the capital Caracas and triggering fears of mass casualties on a scale rarely seen in South America. The first earthquake, registering a magnitude of 7.2, struck at approximately 6:04 in the evening local time, with its epicenter located near San Felipe, the capital of Yaracuy State, roughly 160 kilometers west of Caracas.
Se cayó. Hay gente ahí.
Cayó la puerta, tengo la boca seca. Mira.
The tremor originated at a depth of nearly 22 kilometers, sending violent shaking radiating outward across densely populated cities and towns. Before residents could fully grasp what was happening, a second and even more powerful quake struck, magnitude 7.5, centered just southeast of the town of Yumar, also in Yaracuy State, at a shallower depth of only 10 kilometers. The main shock has been described as the largest earthquake ever recorded in Venezuela, and the strongest the country has experienced in more than 125 years. The timing made the disaster all the more devastating. Wednesday was a public holiday in Venezuela, commemorating a decisive military victory in 1821 that secured the country's independence from Spain. Millions of people were at home, gathered with their families or out at public events, when the ground beneath them began to shake. In Caracas alone, residents described a scene of pure chaos. Buildings swayed violently from side to side. Walls cracked and gave way. Dust columns rose above neighborhoods where restaurants and businesses were still busy from the holiday afternoon. People ran into the streets, many of them barefoot, clutching children and pets, staring in disbelief as entire building facades crumbled before their eyes, exposing the interiors of apartments and offices to the open air.
Mira el edificio mío.
Son las 8 p.m. aquí, Avenida Los Próceres de San Bernardino.
Emergency responders mobilized immediately across the country. In the municipality of Chacao in eastern Caracas, more than 500 personnel were deployed to conduct search and rescue operations. Gas supplies were shut off as a precaution across multiple districts. Large sections of the capital lost both electrical power and cell phone signal, cutting off communication for thousands of families, including many of the more than 7.5 million Venezuelans who had emigrated abroad during years of economic crisis, desperately trying to reach their relatives back home.
Colapsado, hay, bomberos.
The neighborhoods of Los Palos Grandes and Altamira in Caracas were identified by Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello as among the worst affected areas, with what he called alarming situations of collapsed homes and buildings. In one unspecified area of southeastern Caracas, reports indicated that nearly all high-rise structures in the vicinity were either heavily damaged or had completely collapsed. A bank building in the capital also came down. Emergency vehicles struggled to navigate streets blocked by rubble, downed electric poles, and fallen debris. Authorities urged motorists to clear the roads immediately to allow ambulances and rescue teams through. Simon Bolivar International Airport in Caracas sustained significant damage and was shut down, with all arriving and departing flights suspended. Video footage circulating on social media showed debris falling inside the terminal and passengers scrambling for safety.
Vamos a ver el parque now, Kevin.
Hospitals moved quickly to expand capacity, with staff at the Hospital de Clínicas in Caracas asked to double their night shifts to handle the influx of injured patients. Footage from inside the hospital showed darkened corridors with ceiling panels hanging loose and plaster scattered across the floors.
Acaba de temblar en Caracas y estamos aquí en el Hospital Risques, donde pues hubieron daños materiales.
Building collapses were also reported in the states of Trujillo, Carabobo, Aragua, and Miranda, and in the coastal city of La Guaira, situated near the capital. Acting Venezuelan President Delcy Rodriguez addressed the nation in a state emergency declaration, confirming that fatalities had already occurred. She announced that hundreds of emergency workers were actively engaged in rescue operations and called for national unity in the face of the disaster.
Marico, se cayó toda la llanada.
Mira los delfines, mira, 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 mira.
Interior Minister Cabello separately urged all residents to remain outside their buildings, warning that the aftershocks following an event of this magnitude were fully capable of bringing down structures already weakened by the main quakes. Within just 2 hours of the main shock, 6 aftershocks had already been felt across Caracas.
¿El doctor dónde está?
Tenemos patria, no joda. ¡Qué locura! Oye, la gente no daña en esto.
Geologically, the disaster unfolded within a triangular zone bounded by 3 major strike-slip fault systems: the Bacano Fault to the south, the Oca-Ancon Fault to the north, and the Bucaramanga-Santa Marta Fault to the west.
Bueno, un daño estructural importante que están presentando en este momento. Hay mucha alarma.
The Bacano-Moron El Pilar Fault System, a 1,300-kilometer long network of right lateral faults running along Venezuela's entire northern coast, lies at the tectonic boundary where the Caribbean plate meets the South American plate. The Caribbean plate's eastward movement against the South American plate produces an oblique collision zone prone to exactly this type of catastrophic seismic event. The Bacano Fault itself has generated devastating earthquakes in the past, with major events recorded in 1610 and 1894.
Sí, mira cómo se cayeron todas las paredes del frente. Marico, esto es muy impresionante, mira esto. Ay, Dios mío, la gente.
Seismologists pointed out that strong earthquakes are statistically unusual in Venezuela compared to Pacific-facing countries like Chile or Mexico, which makes this event all the more unexpected for a population not accustomed to seismic activity on this scale. The shaking was felt far beyond Venezuela's borders. In neighboring Colombia, residents in the Caribbean and northeastern regions reported feeling the tremors, though no injuries or damage were reported there. Buildings in the Brazilian Amazon cities of Manaus, Belém, and Macapá were evacuated as a precaution after the quakes were felt across the region.
Cayeron 2 edificios, mire, al lado de la Altamira. Dios mío, el que estaba aquí en Altamira, el hotel Altamira, que tanto semáforo Se cayeron dos edificios, Dios mío, ay, tiene que ver muerto.
The United States pledged immediate support, with search and rescue teams, medical personnel, and humanitarian supplies announced for deployment to Venezuela in the critical first hours and days following the disaster. The U.S. Embassy in Caracas confirmed that all its staff had been accounted for and urged American citizens in the country to seek secure shelter and stay away from damaged structures.
Deben haber gente ahí.
Claro que hay gente.
No, no hay señal, no hay señal.
Witnesses across Caracas described the experience in terms that underscored just how unprecedented this event felt even to those who had lived through previous disasters.
Japan then got hit this morning with a 6.9 that some say it's been upgraded to a 7.2. And there were some injuries that were reported, but it was mostly from falling debris, not buildings come crashing down. So, you know, a lot of earthquakes. Now in Venezuela, and, you know, here's the thing. Is President Trump or the U.S. military going to get any credit? Because they've been ordered to go down and start giving humanitarian aid and help with the rescues. They've already got search and rescue teams coming from local agencies in Los Angeles and I believe in Virginia. And when I say credit, you know, people are always talking shit about President Trump and the U.S. military. And, you know, you're not supposed to be doing something kind, considerate, things for the good. You're not supposed to be looking for credit. But I also believe in giving credit where credit's due. And we're going to go down and try to help the Venezuelans. We're going to deliver food, medical aid. We're going to help in the search and rescue and try to find as many survivors as possible. And, you know, what will the world and the politicians say? So it's a good thing that we're doing this to help the Venezuelans. Now, weather in Europe is also out of control. And they're having what they call an omega factor. It's where you have systems on one side and then dead air in between another system. And usually the weather in Europe travels pretty fast. It's carried by the wind coming off the Atlantic, and it blows the systems pretty much through, Europe, and it moves fairly quick. Well, this omega factor, it's just sitting there. And the heat has climbed to historic points in Europe. And just in France, it was reported yesterday that between 50 to 70 people have died just from drowning. They're jumping in the rivers and trying to escape the heat, and apparently they can't swim or they don't understand the currents, and they're dying. And then we had 2 children that were killed in their car from being overheated. Good job, parents. But, you know, that happens here in the United States. People will leave their pets and they'll leave their kids in the back of a car thinking, oh, I'm only going to be gone for a minute. And they don't realize that the temperature rises really, really quick inside the cars. So, you know, California, I live in the San Diego area. And we have some pretty big fault lines that run through our area. But, you know, I'm 63 and I don't remember any large earthquakes actually hitting San Diego. We have them to the east in the Salton Sea area, which is the beginning of the San Andreas Fault. And then we've had them up in LA. And San Diego's been fairly lucky, but they're saying that the big one's coming. Of course, they're always saying the big one's coming. So, yeah, who knows what's going on. So that's my nature talk. So off to the Persian Gulf. 69 ships transited the Straits of Hormuz yesterday, and there was no attacks reported. But suddenly it just came out, I think within the hour, that the IRGC sent out a radio traffic message and basically was saying, we're closing the straits again, and any ship going through is going to be bombed. The Iranians can't make up their mind, or it's rogue people that are making these decisions and not listening to whoever's supposed to be in charge. So that's pretty much what's going on. Now, here in the United States, the Senate decided to try and invoke the War Powers Act against President Trump and his war with Iran. And the War Powers Act, the president has the right to use the military in pretty much any incident, event that happens in the world. And he has up to 60 days before he has to get approval from Congress to continue the action. After 60 days, Congress can sit there and take a vote whether they should support the war or go against it. And if they go against it, then the president of the United States has 30 days to pull the troops and combatants out. Well, yesterday, 4 treacherous Republicans, and we know who they are, they're always the same 4, they voted with the Democrats to enact the War Powers Act. It then went over to the House of Representatives side, where it was shot down immediately. But 4 treacherous Republicans decided to vote with Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. And it's never going to end. Now, lately I've been talking a lot about how the Democrats have turned completely left. And they're calling themselves progressives. Well, that's just another name for Marxists and communists. You know, they call themselves the Democratic Socialists of America. But they're Marxists. They're worse than socialists. And they want to see the downfall of the United States as we know it. And Bernie Sanders is one of the main ones, with AOC and several others. And then you've got a bunch of Muslims that are being voted into office. And they're very much against the United States of America and against this republic. And it's literally getting out of control. So a couple of days ago, or last week sometime, I talked about how Bernie Sanders and his wife are probably involved in some fraud that took place when she started a university in the state of Vermont. And Bernie used his connections as a U.S. senator to get a bank to finance this university and get a loan. And within 2 years, she had collected over $600,000, or no, I'm sorry, maybe $200,000 or more. And she quit. And shortly thereafter, the university went out of business and all those kids lost their education and lost their school. Well, now it's coming out that her son, which is the stepson of Bernie Sanders, he was involved in a nonprofit organization that was involved with that university. And he made over $800,000. Doesn't have a job, just like Bernie's never had a real job. And he made over $800,000 by leading the nonprofit organization. And we'll get something straight here. A lot of people that donate to nonprofits, they kind of believe it's a charity, and they think that all their money is going to be charitable. It's not. A nonprofit organization is just another type of business. And all that money goes to wherever they decide it needs to go to, if it's salaries or to whatever their program is. Well, here's a video showing you a California politician, a city councilman, who was just sentenced to prison for what? Voter fraud. And guess what? He's Muslim.
A former Lodi City Council member is headed to jail for a 2020 election fraud scheme. Shakir Khan took a no-contest plea deal for stashing more than 40 ballots at his home for the 2020 election. He also used his personal information to register 70 voters. A judge sentenced him to 3 years in jail with a 3rd year suspended and served under mandatory supervision. If Khan violates the terms of his supervision, an 8-year state prison term could be imposed.
Now, when it comes to immigration, President Trump just had 3 huge Supreme Court wins. And I'll tell you, it's kind of funny. I'm not going to say who she is, not going to give her any kind of legitimacy, but a U.S. Congresswoman made a statement yesterday that illegal aliens, they're not voting in our elections because they know it's against the law. So these same people couldn't figure out that entering the country illegally was against the law. But they're not going to break the law when it comes to voting because they know it's against the law. She actually said that. They know they're not going to vote because they know it's against the law. I mean, is she a DEI hire? So when it came to the Supreme Court, they made 3 decisions, 1 yesterday and 2 today. And the first one was on green card holders. Basically, they sided with the president, saying that if you leave the country and you have a green card, and then you come back to the United States, and as they run your record, they find out that you've been charged with a crime or you've been convicted of a crime, that they're not letting you back into the country. And people don't understand a green card is just a temporary residency card in the country. There's nothing permanent. And yet I'll show you a video where the Supreme Court, 3 liberal judges, the DEI hires, they basically said that temporary status is permanent. Apparently they don't understand the word temporary because the Supreme Court ruled again this morning that they're ending this protected status of several groups of immigrants that came here for asylum because there was political violence or something else going on in their country. And so the hundreds of thousands of Syrians and Haitians that came here asking for refugee status, well, now they're going to be deported. President Trump has ended their protected status. So, of course, it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said temporary means temporary, not permanent. But yet those 3 women on the Supreme Court, no, temporary means permanent.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me go ahead and ask all of you what I personally believe to be a very basic question. What exactly does the word temporary mean? Does the word temporary mean permanent? Does it mean everlasting? No, of course not. Temporary means temporary. It means short term, impermanent, not everlasting. That is what temporary means. And everyone with a functioning brain inside of their head knows this to be the case. But well, folks, here's the problem. We currently have 3 justices, as they're called, sitting on our great Supreme Court who actually don't have a functioning brain inside of their heads. In fact, I want you to take a look at something here. In a stunning 6-3 Supreme Court victory for the Trump administration and all of us Americans, far-left Supreme Court Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson argued that the word temporary in the phrase temporary protected status actually means permanent. That is what they argued, I kid you not. Anonymous reports from inside of Washington, D.C. are suggesting that not a single one of these justices actually knows how to read. Now, ladies and gentlemen, jokes aside, let's go ahead and break down really in detail all of today's massive Supreme Court victories. Breaking news, President Trump this morning scored 2 major immigration victories at the Supreme Court. In one ruling, the court says that migrants turned away at the border before entering the United States cannot apply for asylum because they haven't legally arrived inside of our country. Folks, yes, under the Biden administration, we had illegal immigrants applying for asylum status while they were still in their home country. They didn't even make it they weren't even in the U.S. They'd never even been here. Let alone some of them didn't even walk up to the border. They were applying for asylum status from back down in Guatemala or wherever the hell they came from. Guess what? That's not how it works. As of this morning, it is shut down. In another, the justices, the Supreme Court justices, well, at least six of them have officially determined that Haitian and Syrian migrants with temporary protected status cannot keep those protections in place through a court order while they challenge the Trump administration's effort to end that status and deport them. These two rulings today hand Trump a significant victory as his administration moves to tighten asylum rules and reshape American immigration policy. First off, dogs and cats and geese and ducks all around the United States of America are rejoicing at today's news. You all heard on the 2024 campaign trail, Trump said they're eating the cats and the dogs. Guess what they were? They were snatching up people's cats and dogs, going to the park downtown, snatching up ducks and geese from the local pond, bringing them back home, having Haitian barbecues. So cats and dogs today are rejoicing we can get rid of them. Now, check this out. Let's really break this down. Now that President Trump can officially revoke and deport all of these third world TPS, temporary protected status recipients, handed out like Willy Wonka chocolate bars during the Biden administration, we are now, as of this morning, officially able to get rid of how many? 350,000 Haitians and over 6,000 Syrians that were let into this country by the Otto Penn administration. This is a massive victory for the country. If you ask me, we don't need them here. We don't want them here. We never wanted them here. And now we have the legal right, thank you to the Supreme Court, to get rid of them. Guess what? Permanent means permanent. I'm sorry, temporary. Well, that's true. Temporary means temporary. Permanent means permanent. Temporary is not permanent. And now we have the concrete confirmation coming out of the Supreme Court. Now, folks.
Well, the other decision that was made. So, first of all, President Trump made it a rule that if you're coming to the United States to ask for asylum, that you're supposed to ask for asylum from the first country that you enter that is considered to be a safe country. You're not supposed to just come through all these countries and then get to the United States border and ask for asylum. Well, the thing that just changed was that they have what they call asylum metering. And this wasn't started by Trump. This was actually started by Clinton and Obama, where we limit the amount of people asking for asylum on a daily basis. And it was taken to the Supreme Court because the left was saying, oh no, once they're in the United States, they can ask for asylum. And Supreme Court basically said, knocking on the door doesn't make you be in the United States. If you're knocking on the door, you're in Mexico or you're in Canada. And it came down to the Supreme Court basically said, if you go to someone's house and you knock on their door, does that mean that you're inside their house? Common sense is actually beginning to rule through the Supreme Court. They also made another important decision. They struck down Hawaii's law that if you had a concealed weapons permit, that if you entered a restaurant, a business, someone's property, their house, you had to inform them that you had a concealed weapons permit and ask permission if you could keep the weapon on you. Well, the Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional. So as of right now, folks, if you're in Hawaii and you have a concealed weapons permit, which is really, really hard to get, you don't have to tell anybody you've got the weapon on you. So recently, I've been ending these videos with a quote from famous, infamous people. And they all have a meaning that is amazing. And let me read this one. And this is from Thomas Paine, an American patriot from 1776. 250 years ago. And it was the famous opening line of the American Crisis pamphlet series, and it was written to boost the morale of the Continental Army during its lowest points. And the quote is, "These are the times that try men's souls." And that's exactly what's happening in this country right now. These are the times that try men's souls. Now, here's something I kind of forgot to mention. Democrats. We talked about it the last couple of days, that the Democratic Party that you knew really no longer exists. It's being taken over by the Democratic Socialists of America, the communists, the Marxists, Muslims. It's being taken over. And if you truly love this country, you're invited to leave the Democratic Party and come over to the Republican Party. I mean, after all, we have cookies. But the thing is, it's being shown that large number of Democrats over the last couple of years are leaving the Democrat Party and joining the Republican Party. And we'll show you some factual information on that.
My, oh my, are we starting to see something absolutely huge across the nation. Bottom line, when all said and done is, sorry, my camera's going a little crazy. Hello, I'm over here. Yeah, there you go. Bottom line, we're watching the Democrats commit collective suicide in real time. It's actually happening all as Trump's poll numbers are surging to their highest levels in months. And I want to show you how both of these dynamics are actually interconnected. So let's start with what happened just this past Tuesday. I'm sure many of you saw it. 3 ultra-leftist Marxist communists, as Trump likes to call them, endorsed by New York City's Democrat Socialist Mayor Zoran Mamdani, swept their congressional primaries. So we're talking Brad Lander. He's the former New York City comptroller. He didn't just beat 2-term incumbent Dan Goldman, who, by the way, led the impeachment efforts against President Trump. He demolished him by over 30 points. He Liz Cheney'd him. That's not a defeat. That's a political execution. And then the New York 13 district, a woman by the name of Daria Liza Avila Chevalier. She's a radical leftist community organizer who recently converted to Islam. She helped run anti-Israel protests in Columbia University. She's part of a campus group with a stated goal of eradicating Western civilization. We'll talk about that in a moment. She beat her opponent, who was a 5-term chairman for the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. So she won. And then in an open seat in New York 7, Mamdani backed Claire Valdez. She rolled to victory by more than 20 points in her contest. So all 3 seats are safe Democrat holds heading into November. And so Mamdani clearly is the face of the party right now. To call these 3 candidates far leftists would be an understatement. They are anti-American, third worldist radicals. They're running for office for one reason, and one reason only, and that's to help bring down this nation from the inside. If you don't know, third worldism is the radical ideology that's basically taking over the Democrat Party. And for third worldists, the fundamental evil on the planet is Western civilization. Western civilization is the permanent, irredeemable oppressor. The white supremacist, patriarchal, Christian persecutor and colonizer of the world. And so the third world represents not merely the victim of this colonizing oppression, but they are the most active resistors, the brave and noble freedom fighters who are valiantly rising up against this oppression. And Islam is the most prevalent religion in the third world, and that was so-called what we call 1040 window. And so therefore Islam sanctifies this uprising as mandated by God. So this is why all the third worldists are rooting for Iran, or were rooting for Iran, you know. Now, a lot of people on the right are they're running around with their hair's on fire. Just saw another Matt Walsh post, another one of his apocalyptic doom and gloom posts. This Eeyore kind of, you know, he says that this turn towards anti-Americanism on the left is absolutely terrifying, promises to end our republic as we know it, blah, 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 defeatism. And all of this doom and gloom, frankly, is missing just how wonderful of a gift this third worldist turn is for the Republican Party. Think about it this way. If the new battle is no longer left versus right, or even the people versus the political class, it's now pro-America versus post-America. It's now pro-America versus anti-America. If that's the new battle, who on earth do you think is going to win that? I mean, seriously, look at the World Cup. I mean, all you have to do is look at what's happening inside the Democrat Party right now. We've talked about this a lot. A New York Times analysis found that between 2020 and 2024, Democrats lost 2.1 million voters, all the while Republicans gained 2.4 million. That's a 4.5 million voter swing in 4 years. And the shift in new registrations is even more telling. In 2018, Democrats captured 34% of all new voter registrations compared to just 20% for Republicans. By 2023 and 2024, that year, Republicans had not only closed the gap, they surpassed Democrats for the first time since 2018. And the battleground collapse tells the real story. Battleground. In Pennsylvania alone, 314,000 Democrats switched to the Republican Party. That's double the around 150,000 Republicans who switched the other way. Democrat registration, the Democrat registration lead in Pennsylvania has cratered from 1 million in 2016 to now just 59,000 today. In 28 key battleground House districts, Democrats lost over 275,000 registered voters between November 2024 and May of this year, shrinking their 733,000 voter edge in these battleground districts to a Republican advantage of 4,100. Voters are fleeing the Democrats. And this is happening at the same time that we're actually seeing Trump's poll numbers hitting their highest in months. Wait.
Again, if you're a Democrat, your party has been taken over. It's been kidnapped. And they're not going to give it back. So again, the Republican side, the conservative side, we have cookies. Come join us. Bring some milk. Okay, folks, that's the end of this. I hope you have a blessed day. Stay out of trouble. Take care of each other, you and your family and friends. Keep your eyes open. Be aware of your situational wherever you are. And stay safe out there. God bless you and God bless America. Take care.